Thanks for joining us today at Studio BOH. Today's guest is actor, instructor, Sean Pratt. Thanks for joining us today, Sean.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, the first question I love to ask actors who come on the show is, what is acting?
If I had to put it in some kind of concise term, to me, acting is just make-believe. It's pretending. You know, I'm putting myself in a fantastical situation, and I'm believing that it's real. And the fantastical situation, yeah, it could be you're a knight in a Shakespeare play or something, or you're just a cop in a scene in a movie, but it's still pretend, and you have to make yourself believe it in order for the audience to believe it. So if I had to put it in a nutshell, to me, that's what acting is.
Cool. If you were to come across a new actor, someone who comes to you, someone you're coaching, and they said, give me one piece of advice that's going to carry me through, what would that advice be?
Wow, that's a really, that's an big question. Because I teach classes about the business of show business, I would just say tenacity, just stick with it. Keep trying to find out more information as you go, talking to people, but overall, I would just say get up every morning and say, I'm going to be working on my career today, and do one thing to move it forward.
That's excellent advice, by the way, and I know that in your workshops, that's one of the things that you really try to hammer home to people.
Absolutely.
When you were young, right? At what point did you decide that you wanted to be?
Before I became an ancient actor, you know, I was one of those really strange people. I've always known I wanted to be an actor since I was a kid. I was always performing in school plays and writing my own stuff, and from the time, I mean, literally from the first grade on, I was involved in theater. So I always knew that this is what I wanted to do. Yeah,
a lot of actors, when they get into it, they don't realize the amount of work it takes to be successful at it. They just think that I'm going to call myself an actor and I'm going to win an Oscar in a week. It doesn't work that way. Talk a little bit about the training process and what you should do in that area.
Well, it took me 2 weeks to get my Oscar, and then I moved on from there. And
awesome.
You know, you have to train. You have to study the craft of acting. Also, that's just the performance part, but also there's voice, there's diction, there's movement. You know, everybody has their quirks that they have to become aware of. For me, I was born in Oklahoma City. All my family is from Oklahoma, and so I sounded like a guy from Oklahoma when I went off to college, and they had to beat that accent out of me. But then what's also really crucial is understanding the business of show business. Agents, managers, networking, marketing, you know, getting a good headshot and resume together. Those things are critical too. You can be the most talented actor in the world, but if you don't have that other component, the business end of it, under control, it's going to be so hit or miss for you.
Yeah. You talked about that you're from Oklahoma, and when you left Oklahoma, you went to New York. Is that correct?
Actually, I got my degree in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at the College of Santa Fe. And I hung around there for a couple of years after I got out of school. I did some Westerns and some Shakespeare in the Park stuff. But then I realized, you know, that this market, New Mexico and Arizona and Colorado, was a pretty limited market. So I packed my bags in 1990 and I went to New York, and I wanted to become a classical theater actor. That's what I wanted to do.
And what was that experience like in New York? I mean, how does it differ from other markets around the country, like the one that we currently are in the DC, Baltimore area?
Right. It's well, you know, first of all, coming to New York as a young actor was so overwhelming. I lived in Brooklyn Heights, and I remember standing on the promenade and looking into Manhattan, and just thinking, how in the world am I ever going to get into that? You know, it seemed so complex and overwhelming. But every day I sort of, you know, got into it, and I went to those crazy cattle calls you read about in Backstage magazine, and kept at it until I finally got a couple of breaks and things began to move for me. It was a wonderful time. I really cherish my 7 years that I was in New York before I moved down here in '96. But I can tell you for a fact, I always say that I think Washington and Baltimore, the metro area, is one of the best kept secrets in the United States. I didn't go full time as an actor until I moved here. You know, with the theater and film and video, audiobooks and everything else. I love this market.
Yeah, it is a great market for all the reasons that you stated. Training as an actor, when a new actor starts out, you want to tell them get training, get training, get training. But how important is it for an experienced actor, someone who's been doing it for a while in those slow times, because there always is a slow time for actors, you know?
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. I think, you know, no matter how long you've been in the business, if you have a downtime, you should always stay fresh. You should be taking some acting classes, some improv classes. But you know, as you well know from our classes that we do together on Pictures and Resumes, we have people who are 10, 20, 25 years older than we are, coming in, still learning about something as basic as the picture and resume. So I don't think it ever stops.
Yeah, it's a constant process.
Absolutely.
You know, even big stars have coaches and things like that.
Oh, sure.
To help them through. So, one of the first times I ever worked with you, I was actually your stand-in.
That's right.
We do look.
That's right. You see?
Look at that. We look exactly like. I got to work as your stand-in,
right?
And you got to work with one of the better-known, classically trained actors in, acting, Ben Kingsley. Tell me a little bit about that experience and what was that like?
Overwhelming. I had just come down. It was like around 2000, I guess it was, and I'd only been here a few years, and I had an opportunity. Pat Moran called me in to read for the role. It was in Tuck Everlasting for a young minister at a church, and he's in the graveyard at night, and he meets Ben Kingsley, and it's sort of this spooky scene where he's looking for a certain gravestone to, as part of his search for this family. And I didn't know how to approach it because, when you're on set with the star, you don't know what they're going to do, and they're going to build the whole scene around what the star wants to do, how they want to shoot it, and so on. And Ben Kingsley was so generous and kind, and he kept working the scene with me and working the scene with me. And then we had lunch right in the middle of it. He didn't go off to his tray. He sat down with all of us in the scene, and we all sat down and had dinner, got back up and got out. And that really meant a lot to me as a young actor to see that it's not always what you hear on set, that the star goes off to their trailer and disappears. But he was really generous. He was really kind.
Nice. I remember that too, him sitting with us. And I was actually, because I was a stand-in, I was off to the side. And he, and you sat down with him, and then all of a sudden he called us over the stand-ins. And that, to me, was, just put him at the top of my list of one of the greatest guys ever.
Absolutely.
For doing that. That
Absolutely.
was really cool. What inspires you as an actor, or who inspires you to keep going as an actor? Where do you draw from for that?
I don't necessarily have a specific person that I necessarily aspire to. Like, I want to be like Tom Hanks, although I would like to be like Tom Hanks in some ways. To me, it's always been about setting a big goal for myself. When I got to New York, I wanted to be a classical theater actor. I wanted to work off Broadway or in the regional theaters, and I did that. I moved down here, discovered all this new work, and I'm like, I want to work on film. So to me, it's more about setting a new venue to work in. Hosting a show on HGTV. That was a really big deal for me. And now my classes that I teach, I really enjoy, because that's a challenge in and of itself, to tell people that I'm legitimate, that I have knowledge I can share with them. So what keeps me going is always, once I get to the top of that little mountain, going, okay, what's the next peak I want to hit?
Sure.
I've done, I might go back to theater in 5 years, or, who knows? But right now, it's all about the teaching. That's the new challenge. Keeps me up, getting up in the morning and going to work.